Physics studies the wave with instruments. Ibn Arabi studies the source by transforming the perceiver into a transparent witness, and this is the most radical difference between modern epistemology and the ancient path of gnosis, because physics believes that truth is outside the observer and must be extracted by technological extensions of the senses, while Ibn Arabi believes that truth is inside the observer and must be revealed by removing the distortions of the self. Therefore, the scientist goes outward and the mystic goes inward. The scientist builds a more powerful detector to pick up smaller signals. The mystic builds a more purified heart so that the real can be perceived without noise. The scientist multiplies tools. The mystic dissolves layers. The scientist tries to conquer nature. The mystic tries to conquer the illusion of separateness. And this is why modern people think knowledge is acquisition, and Ibn Arabi thinks knowledge is subtraction, because everything that hides the real is inside you, not inside the atom. You are not blocked from reality, because reality is hiding. You are blocked because yourself is not transparent enough to reflect the one without distortion, and this is the real meaning of unveiling and self-effacement in Ibn Arabi's system. He is not escaping from the world. He is removing the dirt on the mirror of perception so that the world can be seen as it truly is, and the world is not an object separate from the perceiver. The world is a mode of the real manifesting through consciousness. So, if your consciousness is clouded, your world is clouded. If your consciousness becomes polished, your world becomes luminous, and this is something no laboratory on earth can imitate. Because you cannot put consciousness inside a detector and make it pure. Detectors don't purify hearts. Detectors only amplify signals, and Ibn Arabi is not interested in signals. He is interested in the origin of the signal. The scientist believes the more data he collects, the closer he gets to truth. Ibn Arabi believes the less ego you carry, the closer you get to the real. The scientist thinks truth is a destination in the universe. The mystic knows truth is the ground of being here and now. So, when the physicist stares at the behavior of waves, he is studying the artifacts of the real without ever addressing the one presence that gives those artifacts existence in the first place, because the source is not an object. The source is not a thing. The source is not measurable. The source is not local. The source is not in a particular region of space-time. The source is the being through which all regions of space-time become intelligible, and therefore physics can only map the ripples. While Ibn Arabi points to the ocean, the scientist sees the effect. The mystic sees the cause. The scientist sees time. The mystic sees the timeless. The scientist sees fields. The mystic sees the fieldless. The scientist sees emergence. The mystic sees the eternal, because from the vantage of the mystic, reality is not a construction. Reality is a disclosure. You do not build it, you witness it. You do not compute it, you receive it. And this is why the transformation of the perceiver is the core of Ibn Arabi's epistemology, because knowledge is not information. Knowledge is illumination. Knowledge is not thoughts. Knowledge is direct tasting. Knowledge is not contained in neurons. Knowledge is a light that descends into the heart. When the heart stops reflecting only itself and allows the real to shine through, and Western science has removed the observer as a soul and replaced him with an instrument operator, but Ibn Arabi removes the operator entirely until there is no separate knower left. There is only the known knowing itself through the heart, because when duality dissolves, only the real remains, appearing as all perception, and at that point, there is no distinction between subject and object, because both were only temporary masks over the one being. And this is why instruments can never reach the source, because the source is not an external phenomenon. The source is the one in whom both observer and observed appear as waves of a single ocean of giants. Collapses probability into defined outcomes. Ibn Arabi dissolves the illusion of separation and reveals the one who never collapses, because what physics is calling collapse is not collapse in essence, it is only collapse in appearance inside the narrow theater of this sensory world, because probabilities do not become real when the device gives a reading. They only become visible to the limited human channel that was incapable of perceiving the real before it selected a form. And Ibn Arabi would say that the real never stops being real. The one never becomes more existent simply because a human brain looked or a detector caught a signal, so collapse is not an event in being. Collapse is only a perceptual moment for a limited observer who cannot handle infinity, so it must compress it into a single choice. So the quantum wave collapsing into one possibility is only the external mirror of a deeper internal collapse where the limited human cannot bear the ocean of infinite potential, so it clings to one tiny ripple and calls it reality. And this is why Ibn Arabi does not care about how many possibilities existed before the measurement, because all possibilities are already contained inside the womb of the one being. Like all letters are already contained inside the alphabet, like all colors are already contained inside white light, and the mystic is not shocked by multiplicity, because multiplicity is not the opposite of unity. Multiplicity is unity wearing masks. So the collapse is not transformation. Collapse is concession. Collapse is mercy. Collapse in accommodation. Collapse is the infinite bending down to meet the finite mind, because the finite cannot digest the infinite buffet of simultaneous potential forms. It can only swallow a single slice at a time, and this is why the scientist thinks collapse is creation, while Ibn Arabi thinks collapse is concession, because the real is not creating reality in that moment. The real is allowing reality to be seen in that moment, and the real is not changing form. The real is simply changing how it appears to the perceiver, because the perceiver cannot see all faces of the one in a single unfiltered moment, so the world must be portioned out in frames like a cosmic film. Real frame after frame, manifestation after manifestation, tajalli after tajalli, while the projector never changes, the screen never changes, the light never changes, only the images change. And science confuses images with substance and confuses the flicker with the source of the light that makes flicker possible. And so quantum mechanics thinks the story is about the moment when possibility becomes actual, but Ibn Arabi thinks the story is about the one who lends existence to any possibility to begin with, because the finite cannot create actuality. The finite can only witness what the infinite gives the right to appear, and this is why Ibn Arabi dissolves the illusion of separation, because separation is not a structure of reality. Separation is a filter of perception. It is the way the ego experiences the one when the ego thinks it is separate from the one. So collapse is not the resolution of physical uncertainty. Collapse is the psychological crutch that allows a limited consciousness to grasp a single face of the real without drowning in infinity. So the mystic is not impressed, the mystic is not surprised, the mystic does not worship collapse, because collapse is only a mercy for the weak. The one never collapses, the one never changes, the one never shifts, the one never reduces, the one never becomes the world becomes visible inside the one, and when the world disappears, the one remains, because the one never entered the scene and never left the scene is inside the one. And quantum physics will continue to count collapses and probabilities, while Ibn Arabi sits in the absence of fragmentation and sees that all collapses are illusions of the mind. And when the illusion of separateness dissolves, the mystic does not witness collapse, the mystic witnesses the one who never collapses. Science keeps measuring the wave as if the wave is the truth, but Ibn Arabi says the wave is only the appearance of something deeper than matter, deeper than particles, deeper than equations, because the real question was never what is moving. The real question was what is the source of movement itself, and until modern physics stops worshipping the symptom, it will never recognize the cause. Science thinks that reality becomes real only when we detect it, only when the instruments respond, only when probabilities collapse into data. But Ibn Arabi would say the collapse is only the surface of the real, not the real itself, because manifestation is not the beginning of existence. It is only the moment when the eye is finally able to recognize what was already present beneath the veil of measurement, beneath the veil of numbers, beneath the veil of empirical certainty. The Schrödinger equation gives you the mathematics of how the wave of potential evolves in time. But the mystic is not fascinated by the wave, because the wave is still a phenomenon, still a form, still dependent on something more original than itself. The mystic asks, who is the one that writes the law that makes the wave behave the way it behaves? Because a law cannot exist without a lawgiver. A form cannot exist without a source. A rhythm cannot exist without a hidden finger that strikes the unseen drum, and Ibn Arabi would say that every form, every pattern, every law, every principle is only the self-disclosure of the One, not fragments of different independent powers, not different gods, not different energies, but different faces of one single being reflecting itself through the mirror of the cosmos, so that the One can be known through multiplicity while still remaining one in essence. So when physics tells you everything is probability before observation, Ibn Arabi would call that the unseen realm, the world before forms solidify in perception, the world where the real is hidden behind the curtain of non-manifestation, not unreal, not nothing, but invisible until it chooses to reveal a face from infinite possible faces, and when the measurement collapses the wave into a defined outcome. Physics calls that the coherence. Ibn Arabi calls that tajalli, the act of self-disclosure, the moment when the infinite chooses a particular shape to display, not because the shape is the truth, but because the shape is a mirror in which the seer may see the real shining behind the form. Modern science measures that moment. Mystics participate in that moment. That is the difference. One is outside looking in, the other is inside looking through, because in the mystic worldview, the observer is not a passive creature waiting for truth to arrive. The observer is a necessary participant in the emergence of form. The human consciousness is not an accident. It is a portal where the real sees itself through the heart of the one who witnesses. So the mystic does not say, I discovered the truth. The mystic says, the truth revealed itself through me. The mystic becomes a transparent channel, not an independent knower, not a private separate intelligence, because separation is only a local illusion invented to allow experience to feel like a journey. So physics keeps asking, how does the wave become reality? Ibn Arabi asks, why is there a wave at all? Physics measures the forms after they happen. Ibn Arabi speaks of the source before anything happens, and until modern knowledge turns its face from the effect back toward the cause, from the equations back toward the being behind all equations, it will keep discovering more wave forms without ever recognizing the one who gives the wave the right to exist in the first place. And that is what Ibn Arabi means when he says the one is the origin, not one of the origins, not first among many, not the beginning of a sequence, but the ground of existence itself, the ocean upon which every wave dances. Every equation is only a shadow of the one reality playing with symbols. So science measures the wave, but the mystic points to the source. Schrödinger describes how possibility becomes appearance. Ibn Arabi describes why appearance arises from the one in the first place, and this is the real split between the modern intellectual and the ancient knower, because physics is amazed that reality exists only as probability until the moment of measurement. But Ibn Arabi was never shocked by this, because he never believed that the manifested form was the origin of reality. He always believed the manifested form is a reflection of the real, and reflections do not come first. The face comes first, and the moment you realize this, you understand that quantum probability is only the scientific language for the same old metaphysical truth that existence is not created at the level of matter, it is revealed at the level of consciousness, and therefore the problem is not the mathematics, the problem is the assumption behind the mathematics. The scientist thinks the world is inside matter, the mystic knows the world is inside being. So, when Schrödinger gives the evolution of the wave function, he is describing the pre-manifest layer of existence. But Ibn Arabi goes beneath even that layer, because the wave function is still a veil, still a motive disclosure, still a way the real hides before it shows itself. The wave function is not the source, it is the screen the source projects through. Though physics looks at the wave and says this is the mother level of reality, Ibn Arabi says no, this is only the first veil before the curtains open. This is the backstage, not the actor. This is the canvas, not the painter. This is the hint, not the one who speaks. So Western mind wants to know how possibilities turn into actual events, but Ibn Arabi wants to know why the one wants to express those possibilities in the first place, because becoming is not random, it is a language through which the real speaks its own infinite names, so particles and waves are alphabets not substances, they are symbols not origins, they are traces not the essence, and physics is decoding the symbol, while Ibn Arabi is pointing to the author. Physics is reading the sentence. Ibn Arabi is describing the one who writes the sentence. The problem is that the modern world thinks that finding the rule of expression is the same as knowing the reality behind expression, but the rules are not. The one who breathes the rules into being. The formula is not the reality. The mathematics is not the author. The equation is only the grammar, the real, the meaning that the grammar is trying to contain. So the collapse of the wave function is only the act of manifestation, and manifestation is only the surface of being, and the surface is only one thin layer of the infinite, and the infinite is not discovered by extending your telescope into space, but by extending your awareness into the depth of your own consciousness, because the true particle detector is not a device, it is a heart that is awake. There are billions of dollars poured into machines to detect the smallest trembling of possibility, but there is no budget for polishing the mirror of the self that perceives possibility itself. Physics is asking, how does the wave become the world? Ibn Arabi is saying the wave has no independent existence from the one who makes waves possible. Physics thinks the universe is machinery. Ibn Arabi thinks the universe is metaphor. Physics is describing the what. Ibn Arabi is revealing the why. Physics is measuring the event. Ibn Arabi is recognizing the being behind the event, because appearance is not the first layer of existence. Appearance is the last. Appearance is not the origin. Appearance is the outcome. The real does not become something. The real does not transform. The real discloses. The real reflects. The real shines through infinite forms while never becoming any particular form, and this is why Schrödinger will always stay in the domain of how, while Ibn Arabi moves directly into the domain of why, because possibility does not choose itself. Possibility is chosen by the one who desires to be known through appearance, and this is why the mystic says manifestation is not creation, manifestation is recognition, manifestation is unveiling, manifestation is disclosure, and therefore the wave is not the mother. The wave is only the first step of the veil being lifted before the source is allowed to shine through as form, and when you know that, then you see that physics is studying shadows, but Ibn Arabi is naming the light that casts them.